In my story,
yeah, just getting it out there, yeah.
Throwing it in.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Hello there, I'm Ben Mallinson. I'm coming to you from the ASJ Book Expo, held annually here in August each year here in Sydney. I'm with the lovely Hannah Fagan. Hannah is an up-and-coming writer. She has been a finalist and won several short story competitions. She's in the final stages of completing her debut novel. Thanks so much for joining us, Hannah. How are you?
Well, thank you, Ben. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very well. Look, your debut book, tell us about it. What's the name of the book for a starter, and what's it all about? How did it come about?
Okay, so it's called Today is a Beautiful Day and I'm Happy to Be Alive. It's from an experience I had last year traveling through Spain. I walked the Camino de Santiago for 4 weeks, and it's basically a spiritual journey, so the book is about my spiritual journey, I guess.
Great, right. So I'm sure there are probably a few people sitting at home asking, you know, is this just another travel commentary book, and hasn't that been so done before? So to those people, what would you say? And, you know, really, I guess, you know, tough question, what sets your book apart from any other travel commentary book? Would you even consider it travel commentary?
I guess my book is really a spiritual journey, my spiritual journey, so it's not so much a travel monologue as, you know, we went here and we did this and then we went there and we did that, and that's a really cheap place to do that particular thing. It's more of a story about really engaging in life and overcoming your obstacles.
Right, okay. So it's more about your spiritual journey than anything, or just travel commentary. What would you say spiritually, you know, was the major sort of learning, or the major thing that you took away from the experience?
Yeah, so I guess the Camino de Santiago, it's a Catholic pilgrimage that has been walked for hundreds of years, following the way of St. James. And along the way, I feel a lot of people have experiences come up in their life where they really break through and come to terms with particular things. In my case, it was my depression that I've suffered for many years, and I was really able to break through in a really positive way and overcome that depression.
Right.
So I guess my story is about that journey.
So with the depression that you've mentioned, which is, you know, such a surprising thing, I guess, because, you know, anybody watching this right now would think that you come across as an incredibly lovely and high-spirited person. Is the novel or your piece of work designed or intended to really, I guess, you know, touch the everyday human being who's maybe encountering depression and inspire people through that experience, or is it really just about you sharing your own story? You know, do you have an intent for the book and your audience that, you know, that you want to reach?
I guess it's not so much about my audience finding a way to cure depression. It's more a story about how I personally have battled depression and then overcome it in my own experience. And so I guess people looking for answers may not find it in my book, but people looking to learn about an experience a person has had where they have triumphed against such a dark thing, they will really gain a lot from my story, I believe.
Wonderful, and it's an incredibly important topic. You know, I'm sure you know more than anybody else that the world of publishing can be an incredibly daunting and bewildering experience. It's difficult for young writers or new writers to even know where to begin. What would your advice be to young writers or new writers to really have a fighting chance to get a publishing deal in the first place? And then I guess how to really find the right publisher for a particular piece of work?
I guess the most important thing for up-and-coming young writers is to really research the publishers that they're going to approach. Don't approach a publisher with a travel story if they only publish lifestyle pieces. Really make sure you've got readership of what content they're publishing, and make sure that your content is, you know, in line with what they're currently working with. Publishers don't have a lot of time to read every story. And
because they're receiving, you know, hundreds of manuscripts every single week.
Yeah. So if your story doesn't fit their mold, they're not going to look at it. So I guess research is the most thing for up and coming young authors.
Absolutely. And you know, I guess technology has completely transformed the world of literature in the last 20 years and how we absorb books. For example, there isn't such a need to go to a bookstore anymore and you know, purchase a book when, of course, you can just purchase and download a book on Kindle within a matter of seconds. And information, I would say, overall is just so easily accessible. We can do a Google search on anything we want to. If we want to gain insight into any given topic, we can do a crash course on Wikipedia without really, I guess, taking the time to read books and gain a deep understanding of a particular topic. What do you think the implications of that are on our society, and what can publishing companies do to really innovate to, I guess, ensure that the tradition of reading books remains current and something that is still desirable and appealing for people to do?
I guess there's a couple of things in what you've said, Ben. As far as the Wikipedia learning how to do something, there are many books that offer that particular knowledge of how to ascertain a skill. Overall, I don't think people read books to learn skills. I think people read books to experience a different story from their own narrative. And I think that will always be a current issue in everyone's life, where they want that different experience to look at a different narrative and get a different viewpoint from where they're at, or just even absorb themselves into a book. And I guess the other point I'd like to make is, you know, in this technological world, people are working in front of computers 8 hours a day, and I really feel that a solid book that you can open and look at can offer a person a different sort of escapism from that technology. A book will never have an ad in it. So
yeah, and I mean, I think you're absolutely right. For me personally, I think that reading is an amazing gift, really, at being able to have self-directed learning, and really, I think, self-empowerment. But I'm not so convinced that young people feel the same or have had that discovery. Do you think there's more that we can do or should be doing to encourage young people to read?
I think young people will always read, whether it's through a book or an internet forum, and I think they'll always have that desire to learn more about their environment and to get out of what they know and learn something new. And I don't think that will go away, and I guess for publishing, it's about marketing the books to make sure that they appeal to that kind of different knowledge that people may be seeking, so it looks new and funky or hipster cool or whatever. People will really engage with that, especially the youth.
Fantastic. Well, look, I think it was the writer Paulo Coelho, the great author Paulo Coelho, my personal favourite, writer of The Alchemist and 11 Minutes, recently actually said via social media, Facebook, that you know, really talked about the relevance of social media for writers in this day and age. You often hear writers talk about the process of writing a book as being an extremely isolating experience, and from Paulo Coelho's perspective, he feels that has now changed for the likes of Facebook and Twitter, that there's this constant access to people, this ability to connect to people through social media, to express yourself in the journey of writing a book, and that it doesn't have to be such a lonely experience. Do you feel the same way, or do you agree with that, or what meaning does social media have, I guess, for a writer these days?
I guess for me personally, I find that with my writing, if I feel like I need to write, then I will disengage with everyone in my current reality and my online reality. But
because there is a difference, isn't there? Social media can really seem like we can broadcast this this image of ourselves that we want to portray, but this is very different from the reality that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. There is a difference.
Yeah, and I think for writers, well, for myself personally, if I feel the need to write, then I will write regardless of whether or not I have Facebook popping up in front of my face or a friend walking into my room with a beer asking, do you want to come out? And I guess it's that really personal experience, and to a certain extent, perhaps writers do need to disengage just to get that space and that time where they can create what they're creating.
Right, yeah. So, is it difficult for, like, I mean, I'm asking you personally, I guess, you know, to find that balance between writing, or for anyone really in any career, a work-life balance? You know, how do you kind of separate yourself away from the writing and the project that you're focusing on, and connect with people and find that balance? Is that a challenge?
Yeah, I guess for me, the challenge is more finding the balance between financing my writing and having time to write. So I guess because writing's my passion, that I'm always willing to write more or less all of the time. But to actually finance that lifestyle, that's where the balance for me comes in. So I've recently gone part-time at work to enable me to have more time to write whilst also maintaining that steady income. So I guess it's an important kind of dichotomy between following your passion and dreams and paying your rent.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
we've all got to.
Yes.
Well, look, I guess you know you've kind of touched on it in a few moments sort of during our interview so far. But writing and reading, especially reading, is a deeply personal and subjective experience. For you personally, you know, what meaning does literature have in your own life, and you know, what do you think makes for a really engaging piece of work or a really engaging book? What are the magical ingredients?
For me, I love a book that has social commentary and a book that makes fun of itself.
Right.
I think writers end up with lofty ideals of being superior human beings, because to write is to really believe that you have something worth saying that other people need to hear. So you already have that great ego behind your work.
Right, yes.
And when you read a book where a writer is writing in this way, but then they also take a step back and laugh at themselves, I feel like for me that's a really great read. Incredibly frank answer. I'm not sure how comfortable that would be for people to hear, but I think you're probably quite on the money. Well, look, I know you've got to take off pretty shortly, but you know, what would you say your top read of 2014 has been so far? I'm currently reading An Unexpected Light by James Elliott, which isn't a recent book. It was published some years ago, but it's basically about his travels to Afghanistan, which brings a different light to, I guess, the Middle East, and Afghanistan is this unknown kind of continent and land and full of mystery, and he really brings a personal, humanistic view to people living there that makes you really, I guess, think more thoroughly about whether or not war is ever a correct answer to a political situation. Incredibly
interesting and relevant topic, I think.
Yeah, especially in this day and age.
Absolutely. I certainly, something very troubling to me is the deep conflict, I guess, between the Middle East and the Western world, and really ensuring that we have a balanced perspective of both areas of the world, and that we are not just listening, I guess, to what we're hearing on television and what's being fed to us, but really trying and seeking a deep knowledge of what's really going on in our world in this current time. So a great choice. Look, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a wonderful experience talking to you. I'll be doing the rounds in the next couple of days, talking to many great writers and publishers here at the Expo. Much more great interviews to come. Thanks so much for joining us.